Smile at Fear, the section on Overcoming Doubt, by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. Doubt is the first obstacle to fearlessness that has to be overcome. We're not talking here about suppressing your doubts about a particular thing that is taking place. Nor are we talking about having doubts about joining an organization or something like that. We are referring here to overcoming a much more basic doubt, which is fundamentally doubting yourself and feeling that you have shortcomings as a human being. You don't feel that your mind and body are synchronized or working together properly. You feel that you are constantly being shortchanged somewhere in your life. When you were growing up, at a very early stage, perhaps around 2 years old, you must have heard your father or mother saying no to you. They would say, "No, don't get into that," or "No, don't explore that too much," or "No, be quiet, be still." When you heard the word no, you may have responded by trying to fulfill that no, by being good, or you may have reacted negatively by defying your parents and their no, by exploring further and being bad. That mixture of the temptation to be naughty and the desire to be disciplined occurs very early in life. When our parents say no to us, it makes us feel strange about ourselves, which becomes an expression of fear. On the other hand, there is another kind of no, which is very positive. We have never heard that basic no properly. A no free from fear and free from doubt. Instead, even if we think that we are doing our best in life, we still feel that we haven't fully lived up to what we should be. We feel that we're not quite doing things right. We feel that our parents or others don't approve of us. There is that fundamental doubt or fundamental fear as to whether or not we can actually accomplish something. Doubt arises in relating with authority, discipline, and scheduling throughout our life. When we don't acknowledge our doubt, it manifests as resistance and resentment. There is often some resentment or a reaction against the sitting practice of meditation as well. The moment that a gong is struck to signal the beginning of meditation practice, we feel resistance. But in that situation, we find that it's too late. We're already sitting there on the cushion, so we usually continue to practice. However, resistance in everyday life provides us with many ways to manipulate situations. When we are presented with a challenge, we often try to turn away rather than having to face it. We come up with all kinds of excuses to avoid the demands that we feel are being put on us. The basic no, on the other hand, is accepting discipline in our life without preconceptions. Normally, when we say the word discipline, it comes with a lot of mixed feelings. It's like saying oatmeal. Some people like hot cereal, and some people hate it. Nevertheless, oatmeal remains oatmeal. It is a very straightforward thing. We have similar feelings about discipline and the meaning of no. Sometimes it's a bad no. It is providing oppressive boundaries that we don't want to accept. Or it could be a good no, which encourages us to do something healthy. But when we just hear that one word, no, the message is mixed. Fearlessness is extending ourselves beyond that limited view. The Heart Sutra, an essential teaching given by the Buddha, talks about going beyond. Gone beyond, gate in Sanskrit, is the basic no. The sutra says there is no eye, no ear, no sound, no smell, none of these things. When you experience egolessness, the solidity of your life and your perceptions falls apart. That could be very desolate, or it could be very inspiring in terms of shunyata, the Buddhist understanding of emptiness. Very simply, it is basic no. It is a real expression of fearlessness. In the Buddhist view, egolessness is pre-existing, beyond our preconceptions. In the state of egolessness, everything is simple and very clear. When we try to supplement the brightness of egolessness by putting a lot of other things onto it, those things obscure its brilliance, becoming blockages and veils. In the warrior tradition, sacred outlook is the brilliant environment created by basic goodness. When we refuse to have any contact with that state of being, when we turn away from basic goodness, then wrong beliefs arise. We come up with all sorts of logics again and again, so that we don't have to face the realities of the world. We run up against our hesitation to get fully into things all the time, even in seemingly insignificant situations. If we don't want to wash the dishes right after we have eaten, we may tell ourselves that we need to let them soak. In fact, we're often hoping that one of our housemates will clean up after us. On another level, philosophically speaking, we may feel completely tuned in to the warrior's world. From that point of view, we think that we can quite safely say, once a warrior, always a warrior. That sounds good, but in terms of the actual practice of warriorship, it's questionable. Once a warrior may not always be a warrior if we disregard the beauty of the phenomenal world. We prefer to wear sunglasses than to face the brilliance of the sunshine. Of course, I'm not speaking literally here, since you might well need to protect yourself from the damaging rays of the sun. We put on a hat and gloves to shield ourselves, fearing that we might get burned. The colorfulness of relationships, household chores, business enterprises, and our general livelihood are so irritating. We are constantly looking for padding so that we don't run into the sharp edges of the world. That is the essence of wrong belief. It is an obstacle to seeing the wisdom of the great Eastern Sun, which is seeing a greater vision beyond our own small world. The ground of fearlessness, which is the basis for overcoming doubt and wrongful belief, is the development of renunciation. Renunciation here means overcoming that very hard and tough aggressive mentality which wards off any gentleness that might come into our hearts. Fear does not allow fundamental tenderness to enter into us. When tenderness tinged by sadness touches our heart, we know that we are in contact with reality. We feel it. That contact is genuine, fresh, and quite raw. That sensitivity is the basic experience of warriorship, and it is the key to developing fearless renunciation. Sometimes people find that being tender and raw is threatening and seemingly exhausting. Openness seems demanding and energy consuming, so they prefer to cover up their tender heart. Vulnerability can sometimes make you nervous. It is uncomfortable to feel so real, so you want to numb yourself. You look for some kind of anesthetic, anything that will provide you with entertainment. Then you can forget the discomfort of reality. People don't want to live with their basic rawness for even 15 minutes. When people say they are bored, often they mean they don't want to experience the sense of emptiness, which is also an expression of openness and vulnerability. So they pick up the newspaper or read anything else that's lying around the room, even reading what it says on the cereal box to keep themselves entertained. The search for entertainment to babysit your boredom soon becomes legitimized as laziness. Such laziness actually involves a lot of exertion. You have to constantly crank things up to occupy yourself with, overcoming your boredom by indulging in laziness. For the warrior, fearlessness is the opposite of that approach. Fearlessness is a question of learning how to be. Be there all along. That is the message. That is quite challenging in what we call the setting sun world, the world of neurotic comfort, where we use everything to fill up the space. We even use our emotions to entertain ourselves. You might be genuinely angry about something for a fraction of a second, but then you draw out your anger so that it lasts for 25 minutes. And you crank up something else to be angry at for the next 20 minutes. Sometimes, if you arouse a really good attack of anger, it can last for days and days. That is another way we entertain ourselves in the setting sun world. The remedy to that approach is renunciation. In the Buddhist teachings, renunciation is associated with being nauseated and pained by samsara, which is the confused world. For the warrior, renunciation is slightly different. It is giving away or not indulging in pleasure for entertainment's sake. We are going to kick out any preoccupations provided by the miscellaneous babysitters in the phenomenal world. Finally, renunciation is the willingness to work with real situations of aggression in the world. If someone interrupts your world with an attack of aggression, you have to respond to it. There is no other way. Renunciation is being willing to face that intense kind of situation rather than cover it up. Everyone is afraid to talk about this. It may be shocking to mention it. Nonetheless, we have to learn to relate to those aspects of the world. We have never developed any response to attack, whether it is a verbal attack or actual physical aggression. People are very shy of this topic. Although we have the answers to these challenges in our warrior disciplines, our exertion and our manifestation, or general state of being. In the warrior tradition, fearlessness is connected with attaching your basic existence to greater vision, which is the great eastern sun. In order to experience such vast and demanding vision, you need a real connection to basic goodness. The key to that is overcoming doubt and wrong belief. Doubt is your own internal problem. which you have to work with. But then beyond that, there may be an enemy, a challenge that is outside of you. You can't just pretend that those threats never exist. You might say that your laziness is some form of enemy. But laziness is not actually an enemy. It would be better to call it an obstacle. How are we going to respond to real opposition when it arises in the world? As a warrior, how are you going to relate with that? You don't need party line logic or a package deal response. They don't really help. In my experience of how students usually relate with conflict, I find that they tend to freeze up when someone is very critical of them. They become non-communicative, which doesn't help the situation. As warriors, we shouldn't be uptight and uncommunicative. We find it easy to manifest basic goodness when somebody agrees with us. Even if they're half agreeing with you, you can talk to them and have a great time. But if someone is edgy and negative, then you freeze, become defensive, and begin to attack them back. That's the wrong end of the stick. You don't kill an enemy before they become the enemy. You only slash the enemy when they become a 100% good enemy and present a real 100% challenge. If you're attracted to someone who is interested in making love with you, you make love with them, but you don't rate them. That is the same idea. When a warrior has to kill his enemy, he has a very soft heart. He looks his enemy right in the face. The grip on your sword is quite strong and tough. And then with a tender heart, you cut your enemy into 2 pieces. At that point, slashing an enemy is equivalent to making love to them. That very strong, powerful stroke is also sympathetic. That fearless stroke is frightening, don't you think? We don't want to face that possibility. On the other hand, if we are in touch with basic goodness, we're always relating to the world directly, choicelessly. Whether the energy of the situation demands a destructive or a constructive response. The idea of renunciation is to relate with whatever arises with a sense of sadness and tenderness. We reject the aggressive, hardcore street fighter mentality. The neurotic upheavals created by overcoming conflicting emotions, or the calacias, which are defilements, arise from ignorance. This is fundamental ignorance that underlies all ego-oriented activity. Ignorance is very harsh and willing to stick with its own version of things. Therefore, it feels very righteous. Overcoming that is the essence of renunciation. We have no hard edges. Warriorship is so tender, without skin, without tissue, naked and raw. It is soft and gentle. You have renounced putting on a new suit of armor. You have renounced growing a thick, hard skin. You are willing to expose naked flesh, bone and marrow to the world. This whole discussion is not just metaphoric. We are talking about what you do if you actually have to slash the enemy, if you are in combat or having a good sword fight with someone, as you see in Japanese samurai movies. We shouldn't be too cowardly. A sword fight is real as making love to another human being. We are talking about direct experience. And we are not psychologizing anything here. Before you slash the enemy, look into his or her eyes and feel that tenderness. Then you slash. When you slash your enemy, your compassionate heart becomes twice as big. It puffs out. It becomes a big heart before you can slash the enemy. If you are small-hearted, you cannot do this properly. Of course, many times conquering the enemy might not involve cutting them into two. You might just turn them upside down, but you have to be willing to face the possibilities. When a warrior has thoroughly experienced his or her own basic rawness, there is no room to manipulate the situation. You just go forward and present the truth quite fearlessly. You can be what you are in a very straightforward and basic way. So tenderness brings simplicity and naturalness, almost at the level of simple-mindedness. You don't want to become tricky warriors with all kinds of tricks up your sleeves and ways to cut people's logic down when we don't agree with them. Then there is no cultivation of either ourselves or others. When that occurs, we destroy any possibilities of enlightened society. In fact, there will be no society, just a few people hanging out. Instead, the fearless warriors of Shambhala are very ordinary, simple-minded warriors. That is the starting point for developing true bravery. So, I'd like to share my personal reflection on this reading on smiling at fear, overcoming doubt. I've never thought that I would be reading something from a writing from Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche because he was a controversial teacher. And being a beginner Buddhist many years ago, I wanted an ordinary teacher who just kept with all the Vinaya. But of course, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, he disrobed as a monk. But even when he was a monk, he was quite controversial. But however, recently I started reading his writings and I find that there is depth and honesty in his writings. So my teacher said that it is not the messenger that matters. What matters is the message, whether it makes sense, whether it's wise, whether it's compassionate, whether it resonates with our hearts. That's the most important thing. But of course, it would be helpful to have a teacher who walks his talk or her talk. So what I enjoy about smiling at your fear, Rinpoche said that it is important to open our hearts to look inside ourselves, to see all the fear there is that covers up all the part that we dislike about ourselves. And I didn't expect him to say that fearlessness is actually renunciation. He said that fearlessness is the basis for overcoming doubt and wrong belief. Actually, yeah, I think it's true because we need to really look into our perceptions, our beliefs, and our own hearts to see what we really are. Many of us try really hard every day to deceive ourselves, to cover up the parts that we can't accept. Can't accept about ourselves, can't accept about other people. And there's a lot of tightness there. Therefore, he said that fearlessness requires an open heart. And I totally agree with that. And he said that fear does not allow fundamental tenderness to enter into us, because tenderness is often tinged by sadness. And nobody likes to feel sad. So most of us harden ourselves and we reject being sensitive to the world, to emotions or the things around us. And we continue living this way by entertaining ourselves with various tools to avoid the discomfort of reality, mainly what's within us. So sometimes I also realize that I can cover up parts of myself that I don't wish to be truthful to others. which I reject in myself. And it really takes courage to accept that part of yourself, to forgive and to love ourselves. Because only when we can do this, then are we able to forgive others and to really learn to love others unconditionally. And actually, what really caught my attention in this writing is what he said about fearlessness is a quality of a warrior who knows how to respond to real opposition in the world rather than freezing to it. And I was pretty surprised that he even said that when a warrior has to kill his enemy, he has a very soft heart. So, as you know, for Buddhists, the very first precept for lay people is to refrain from killing. But in this writing, he talks about killing. So at first I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, but my first interpretation of this is my own inner emotions, the negative ones. So he said that most of us don't know how to respond to opposition. When people agree with us or half agree with us, we have a great time with them. And when somebody totally disagree with us, we already make them out to be an enemy before they become an enemy, which is quite true. And he said we shouldn't have to respond with any so-called killing until they become a good enemy, meaning they really want to be your enemy. And that's when he said that then we should respond with a raw, open, and soft heart when we slash the enemy. So I interpret this for my inner emotions, the difficult ones. So of course, in the training of mindfulness, we don't get rid or suppress or to kill an emotion we don't like. So here he seems to be saying that we should face it, and until it becomes a real big problem for us, we have to do something about it, but with a open and a soft, seems to be compassionate heart. And he said that slashing your enemy is equivalent to making love to them. So this is also quite interesting for me. So it's as if saying that if someone charges at you with a sword, you shouldn't just sit there, and you have to defend yourself and others around you. And you need not have the intention to kill, but you should do it with a compassionate, loving, and raw heart that is able to look inside yourself to see if there's any hate there. And when you eventually have to slash the enemy, you know you're not doing it out of hate. And you also know that you're not making that enemy into an enemy until they really come at you. So he said that is the quality of a real warrior, that is tender, raw and naked, soft and gentle. And a warrior that has to slash their enemy, their compassionate heart becomes twice as big. So that's how I interpret this writing. And if you have other ways of interpreting this, please share in your comments below. That's all. Thank you.